Nilima Bhatt, your host for today's Truth and Reconciliation podcast we have started from this year for Truth and Reconciliation work, the week that happens every full moon of July in honor of the Guru Purnima, the full moon that honors the higher self in each of us, the Guru principle. And this year's theme is The Land Keeps the Score, Healing Ideology Impacted Histories. And there is, of course, so much to be done in this space around the world. And I am so delighted that this year, as in the past years, we have our facilitators, our peace builders, our healers, our peace negotiators. We have some incredible, committed change makers from around the world who continue to give us of their teachings, their wisdom, their expertise. And today we have Quanita Roberson with us yet again. I think she's been joining us for pretty much a year. So delighted to have you, Quanita. For those who don't know, they can look you up. Your organization, Nazuzu, celebrates its 20th year next year, from what I hear. As old as your daughter, I think, almost.
Yes.
So she was another child of yours. And I know your work is in truth and reconciliation and peace building and forgiveness. And you work with the corporates, you work with NGOs, you work with individuals. You are based in the US, in Cincinnati, in Ohio,
Yes,
if I'm not mistaken.
you're right.
Yeah, and I know you are so loved. You are so loved. Every single person who knows you and who has met you just is transformed by your presence, by your being, Juanita.
Thank
And
you.
so thank you, welcome. And this year, I want you to share what is the theme you have chosen to
Yeah,
speak
the
on.
the, the theme that first of all, thank you for inviting me again. It's so nice to be here. It just feels right, and especially in this time that we're in history, to continue to show up for this. This year, I wanted to look at healing through the Dagara medicine wheel because I think it is rooted in the earth. And it's rooted in our relationship with the land and the different elements that are a part of that. And I love the Dagara medicine wheel because we all have a sense of what water does. We all have a sense of what fire does. We all have a sense, of what the minerals and nature and earth. And so it gives us an easy access to looking at our relationship with ourselves, with each other, and with the land.
Mm. Thank you. And just to take a step back, the fact that you are in Cincinnati, Ohio, and I know your book is called um, The Inner
Inner
Ground
ground.
Railroad, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, you actually helped me come up with
Uh,
that title. We were on a call and we were playing with ideas because I had a different name for it. And so I'm just in gratitude for you for that piece. The book I think is a very communal book. It's titled The Inner Ground Railroad: A 40-Day Journey to Remembering Soul and Spirit.
mm. So, what does it mean to say the land keeps the score, especially here in the United States, a land that still holds the memory and weight of slavery? Let's go straight into the heart of the subject.
Yeah. Um, yeah, I think that, this country, being in the US, is particularly birthed out of slavery. Birthed out of, like, that's how the country has gotten its wealth. It's still how it gets its wealth, oftentimes now through the prisons, and we have prisoners who work for next to nothing. Um, but I think that if we look globally and we go back to any of our lineages, that we have slavery in our lineages. Whether we were the ones who were enslaving people or we are the enslaved. And both carry the slave archetype, which I think is very powerful because the slave archetype, the shadow side of the slave archetype, is being a slave to a person, a thing, or even an idea. But the light side of the slave archetype is being a slave to the divine spirit within. It actually teaches us self mastery. It's how we find our freedom. And I think that's such an important piece for us right now globally, and all of the things that are shifting is, bondage is bondage. It doesn't differentiate. And so each of our jobs is to step into, what do I need to step into more of my own freedom? I think we kind of get it mixed up sometimes. Like we talk a lot about, being allies with each other. And I don't want you to be my ally. I want you to save your own damn self.
Right? One is the wound of slavery. The other is the wound of the Native American Holocaust, and the third is even the wound of the witch burnings. So
Yeah.
these are three tremendous episodes that have happened on that land. And here is a nation that has kind of rocketed forward, and NASA is like a symbol of the for the moon and the stars,
Hmm.
while there is this unhealed, unfinished business, right?
Yes.
Um, so then the time comes when you can go no further until you go back and you heal that which lies unhealed. Only then can you move further ahead, right?
Yeah.
And I do wonder if the US has reached that point today, right? So do you want to speak to that?
Well, I think we're such an adolescent culture. We're a really young country. And so I think that I don't know if it's, I think we're a really young country, but I also think we're a really young world. I think the adolescent stuff doesn't stop at the borders of the US. I think, but for here, one of the things, and I was sharing this with you before we got on, that I'm excited about knowing, we'll talk a little bit about the wheel in a minute, but I'm a water spirit. And the medicine that water spirits bring is medicine of forgiveness, reconciliation, bridge building, and peacemaking, and the emotions. And what I love about this right now is I know that the second President Bush was water. President Obama was water, is water rather. Um, President Trump is water. And what I love about that is I love knowing that water is water no matter what container you put it in. And so, we had an opportunity to do some healing work as a country when the second President Bush was in office, and we didn't. We had an opportunity to do some of the healing work when Obama was in office. Now, we changed a lot of policy, but we didn't do the underlying healing that made those policies have to be in place. And it's really easy then, and this is what we're witnessing, to turn things back when you haven't done the underlying healing for what makes that exist. And then the first presidency of Trump, we didn't do our healing. And so now we get another opportunity. And what happens is because the universe is only concerned with evolution. And so it has to happen. So it keeps squeezing tighter and tighter until we move. And so we're in this time that I'm being able to witness, big, huge crumblings, but also there's this new birthing that's happening at the same time. It's the two loops that we get to witness in action. And it's actually quite amazing to be able to be in this time. One of the things I have found is there's people who during this time are really rooted in the hospicing out the old, and that can be really painful and sad. And then there's people who are really in the new of, birthing what's these new systems and what's coming. And that can be really exciting and energizing. And then there's people who are stewards who can kind of hold both. And I see part of what I do is I'm in the steward place. I'm hospicing out some stuff, and I'm also midwifing in some of the new.
So let's go deeper into that. How do you see the wound of slavery reflected not just in people, but in the land itself? in the trees, the fields, the rivers, that witnessed so much suffering.
Yes. There's a quote by, oh my goodness. I can't remember her name. It'll come to me. She wrote the book Black Liturgies, but she wrote, I think it is one of the deepest evils to become a thief of place, to make someone a stranger to their home, and to mark their relationship to the land by bondage instead of love. And I think that what we've created is when we shift our relationships with the land around bondage, then oftentimes the reaction is to conquer the land, right? And so we've moved into this place of um, trying to conquer and even not even considering nature in so many of our decisions and choices. I often will say that we're all swimming in the water of what's right, real, and true as white and male. And the problem with that equation is it often takes nature and the divine out of the picture. And so it's not a complete holding. And then we use that to measure everything. And so what has happened with the land is we've moved into this like conquering relationship instead of being an authentic relationship so often. And, one of the ways that I've seen that, I remember driving to visit my son. He used to, when he was at college, and I'd have to drive through this farmland. And I'd see all these Trump signs along the farmland. And I started to wonder, these people in the farms are like close to the land. It surprised me that they wouldn't have that relationship. And then someone said, oh, but the way we farm now isn't about working with the land, it's about conquering the land. And so, one question that I love is that I heard someone say before is, we can talk about how grateful we are for the earth, but is the earth grateful for you? And what does
Mm.
that mean? You know?
That brings me to the adolescence, right? What does it mean to grow up in a culture that has never fully mourned its history of slavery? And how does this lack of initiation affect how we show up as adults today?
Yeah. Um, First, I would say that's most cultures because of colonization. And so that we have, and oftentimes slavery shows up, and we may not name it that. We have indentured servants. We have all these different ways of creating slaves without using the word. Um, and there's a belief that I know that some communities hold where one of the reasons they believe that African Americans struggle so much is because our ancestors haven't been grieved. During slavery, they weren't grieved. And if they haven't been grieved, they can't help you. And so, this piece about leaning into relationship and stronger relationship with the ancestors so that we can be in real relationships and so that they can support us um, and what we're doing here um, is a big thing. I think, I think we all have so much. I think we don't know how to grieve. So, if anything, I think it's, globally that we have such a hard time really understanding the pandemic,
Mm.
because it takes us to our grief and it's
Mm.
trying to get us to empty out. We say so much about what we want to have happen, but if you don't let go of what you don't want, there's no room for the new to show up that you do.
Thank you for bringing us back to the pandemic. Truth and Reconciliation, this work, this global annual self-organizing movement created around George Floyd's killing, right? And I remember being so deeply stirred from some, I don't know which level of my being, that just knew until we heal these collective traumas, they will continue to repeat themselves. And on one hand, we need and the collective traumas of the land and the people. And on the other hand, we also need to move towards leading inclusive peace. And that's why this whole, the hospicing of the old and the midwifing of the new. And so in a way, I think the truth and reconciliation work is spiritually initiated out of the US. I should acknowledge that because that one being's death led to such awakenings. So Quanita, you're really someone who understands grieving, and you mentioned ancestors haven't been grieved. And this is something that exists in the Indic tradition a lot, that every year we have to mark the death anniversary of the loved ones who have passed. We offer them water, we offer them food, we offer them prayers, their memories. And it's understood that if their souls are honored and acknowledged, they will carry on in peace. And from the higher other worldly dimensions, they continue to support our evolution, because in many ways, we are the ancestors who can return again and again. Like this is like a beautiful escalator that goes up and goes back down. And I'm happy to hear that there is such a concept even from your tradition. Now, does this come from the African traditions that you are referring to, talking about the ancestors who have not been grieved? Could you speak more to that?
Yeah, and I would say um, that there is I think in a lot of indigenous communities, African, I experience it with my friend Tui from New Zealand. Like, there's I think when you get into closer to some of the indigenous communities, my Native Americans spirit friends, and that there is a more understanding about the importance of grieving. But one of the things I think often happens in this culture today is we're so much in this adolescent adult culture. We do so much of the imitation instead of the integration of the grieving. We can go and do the rituals, which I love because I think ritual, whether you believe it or not, doing it is your faith gesture and it helps to move stuff. But that doesn't mean that we really know how to grieve, you know? And so what I'm finding is that a lot of people, because they don't understand, number one, that grief requires community, that we'll never go to the depths of our grief without knowing somebody's there to hold us, And so we can go into the water, the grief, for a little bit, but if we don't have community there, we'll come back out before we actually get to the bottom of it to get to the other side where the gift of the wound is.
Mhm.
And so, I think there is still this need, whether um, uh, African American, whether Indian, whether whatever, because bondage is bondage. There's this need to learn more and more. How do we lean into grief? One of the things that I believe is one of the biggest myths that we tell about grieving, especially here in the US, is that we all grieve differently. I don't think it's true. I think we all avoid grief differently, and that story gives us permission to avoid it. And
Wow.
so, but the grieving itself is just the releasing of your emotions and letting them go. And I think we so often avoid it because we think grief requires suffering. But grief isn't suffering, grief is a release.
Mhm.
I love Martine Prechtel, who said that when you're grieving the thing that you've lost, we call it grief. But when you're grieving the thing that you've got, we call it praise. Because to really know how to praise something, you need to know what would be lost if it was gone. And that every praise has a bit of grief in it. It's that release, it's that letting go. Yeah.
Wow. Juanita, everything you say kind of creates a whole different set of questions, and wanting to go deeper with you. But I want to stay with the grief of the land that
Yes.
you are basically saying is the grief of the ancestors who have not been grieved.
Yeah.
So, how does the land hold those
Uh,
memories, those imprints? And how does the Dagara medicine wheel become one possible tool to
yes.
release?
Yeah, well, first I'll say that the wheel, the elements of the wheel is the earth. The ancestors is the elements. The stone people, the ancestors and the stones and the minerals, the trees, the ancestors and the trees, and the earth, Mother Earth herself. Like the elements aren't separate from the ancestors. And so, when we go to them, and I think how many times I've gone to the elements. Matter of fact, a couple weeks ago, I was at the Ohio River making offerings, and it was actually the anniversary of my mother's death. And well, not the anniversary of her death. It was the day, the age that I was is the age that she was on that day that she died. So I was 54 and 48 days old, and I went to do ritual because I'm grateful that I know that I don't have to. Not only do I not have to, I'm not supposed to live her story, you know? And we
Mhm.
can do it unconsciously in this sense of loyalty, step into our parents' stories, but that's not ours. I was grateful that she lived her story so that I could live mine.
Mhm.
And actually, I went across the river in Kentucky where my family was enslaved, and I got items that were nurture and care for me now. Bought some pottery and a picture, some art, and then bought stuff from the farmer's market, some honey and eggs and flowers, and I use some of that in my offering to the water. Um, and it's this piece of like almost what you were talking about the connection, about it's this cycle, it's this circle. It's like my mother, I am her in some ways, and I'm not. It's
Mhm.
the both and. I was telling my daughter that recently, like uh, I told her, I said, nobody will ever love you like your mama. and and I said, because you are a part of me and you aren't me, you know? And so there's ways in the both and living in that, and that we can be intentionally, like I go back to Maysville, Kentucky, because there's a place that used to be the old auction block for the slaves there where my family was enslaved, and I make offerings to the ancestors. And then I get stuff that nurture and care for me.
Mhm. So you are the master of ritual, and you really seem to know how to put it together. I'm not even sure anyone taught you. I think much of this you intuited. Am I right?
Well, I think it's that we all are if we listen deep enough. I didn't know the day before what I was going to do on that day, but I knew that I would be told, I would know. I woke up and I got, oh, this, I need to go. I need to go to Maysville. I need to go. And I didn't know what I was all going to do when I got there, you know. But I could listen to, oh, this farmer's market isn't open today, but there's a store next door that I had never noticed. And this guy is making jewelry, and I've been there lots of times, but it's a small town. And, or I had never driven downtown on the new downtown Maysville. And so went down there, and that's where I found a farmer's market. So it's like you follow your nose, you listen, and then when I found the flowers and the honey and the eggs, I knew, oh, I have to take stuff to the river on this side of the Ohio River to offer. But it wasn't unfolding. It wasn't I wasn't trying to make it up. I was being in relationship. And every moment has in it what it already wants to be. Our job, I think, is to listen deep enough. We just don't often slow down enough to listen for what's the next step. And you can't get it wrong because you're just in conversation. Conversation includes both sides. So if, I made a move and I bought this stuff and then I got, oh, it just happens to be the farmer's market was at the base of the Ohio River. It was a big flood wall on the Kentucky side, which is interesting to me too, that I hadn't thought about the wall. And then when I came back over across the river, I didn't even know when I came across it, I was going to go to the river on the Ohio side to do the offering. I didn't know
Mhm.
that till I got home. and I put the flowers in the vase, and I pulled it out, and I was like, oh, because that next day I actually did the ritual the following day. And it just so happens I was invited to an invitation only gathering with these leadership artist cohort from different countries in Africa. It was a meet and greet. So I hung out with them and got to talk and be with them. And then I left from there and went to the Ohio River. I had brought the stuff for the ritual down at the water.
Yeah, so we talk about in Shakti leadership, we talk about living the mythopoetic life, always looking for the symbol in the moment, looking to find the deeper myth, which is a deeper truth. And it's always there if we slow down enough to be able to tap into it. And so coming back to how this moment in the US and
Mhm.
all the chaos, I must say I live in a bubble here in Pondicherry. I'm in my own spiritual cave of practice. But I do know it's a pretty crazy time in the US and there's deep
Yes.
polarization.
Yeah.
Um, and what if mythopoetically we interpret it as actually it is not crazy, it's initiation?
Oh,
And
yeah.
reframe the trauma as initiation, and how can we move from the adolescent psyche of a young nation
Yes.
towards a more mature and adult psyche, and how ritual can play a role to look at these unhealed traumas, right? And grieve what needs to be grieved. And so my question is, how do you think one Juanita can make a difference? And this work, how does it actually make a dent? What
Yes.
is your sense?
Oh, I love that question because I run a 16-month leadership rites of passage cohort for adults, and two of the alum are on this call. And how it makes a difference is because as we grow up and we bring our own unique genius in the world, as we find more of the truth of who we are, when our self meets our soul and we get clarity on, oh, this is mine to offer, what happens is flow can show up. Everything, and then you are tending to what's yours to tend to. I think that we as humans are our most underutilized resource in this world. I think that if we initiated all of the adults, we could solve every issue on this planet. But we're not getting access to it because we're not growing up. And so we want all of the freedom and none of the responsibility. And I think that we've confused passion with purpose. That oftentimes what I'm here to do and what my purpose is, I don't always want to do it. And I actually think that is by design, because what it does is it actually keeps me cleaner in the work because I'm not trying to make certain things happen. There's been times where I've applied for someone who has invited me to apply for a particular job, and it was just so easy. The flow of the way it showed up was so clear that I could not apply, but I was praying not to get it because I didn't want to do it. And of course, yes, it ends up being me to do it. But what it did was it had me um, not be attached to how it showed up. And so it could be really clean. I could be clean in the work because I wasn't attached to whether I got it or not.
Mm. Can you share? I'm requesting to mute
Yeah.
someone. Um, can you give us some stories of, you're so prolific in the work you do, and give us some of these stories and actual things you have done where that even though it was you and a small group of people that did the work sincerely with clarity, that you made a difference.
Yeah.
Can you give us some stories, some
Yeah.
examples? We would love to hear because you do such
Yeah.
an
So we just about, I forget how many weeks it is now, a couple weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, had our fourth cohort of Fire and Water graduate. And at the end of the 16-month journey, we do 3 retreats in the 16 months. And at the end, we do what we call presentations of learning. So you present not what you did, but what you've learned. And we had one of the people who the last couple of weeks she was struggling. It was she had double booked herself. She was like, is she really going to get there? She was also just having deep heartache and feeling disconnected. And so you never know like what how spirit is moving people, up until that day. So in some ways, her presentation of learning was a surprise to me. You know, she came and she started basically by saying she has been taking care of everybody else and really getting that she needed to stay in her own lane. And she's like, I need to stay in my lane and tend to my stuff. And she's like, people didn't even ask me to like get in their lanes all the often, And she said to us, she hadn't sang for 40 years and that she decided she wanted to write a song about her experience and sing it to us. And she says, I hadn't even, she's like, I hadn't sang it to practice either. I wanted you all to be the first to hear me sing this. So my voice might crack, it might be, and all of us, of course, are like in tears because she's just like, I mean, to have that soul moment with someone, it transforms you. And, and because we can't give what we don't have, when we're transformed, everyone we come in contact with gets a different us. And it changes. I mean, we're always changing the world. The question isn't in whether or not we're going to change the world. The question is, how do we change the world? Are we going to change it in breeding more death? Are we going to change it in birthing more life? And I know that these people who have leaned into compassion and care for themselves then have it for me. I think we do so many things where we want people to have dialogue and be, and we want them to feel compassion for somebody else, but we haven't stopped to ask, do they have that level of compassion for themselves? This whole piece about love thy neighbor as thyself, I think we are. I just think we don't love ourselves. And so we can't skip over that. And part of the initiation, part of understanding the importance of elders, and I'm not just talking about olders, but I'm talking about elders. And I think we confuse often teachers and guides with elders. But I think teachers' focus is the topic, guides' focus is the journey, and elders' focus is you. And so there's a different holding. And elders can hold the space to help initiate you. And if you don't have initiated adults, you can't have initiated elders. And if you don't have initiated elders, you can't initiate the youth. Or, as Melodoma from Burkina Faso has said, or we do initiation through trauma. And that's what we've chosen to do mostly in the West. Because the soul knows it needs to be initiated. So it'll call up trauma. It'll call up an illness. It'll call up a war. It'll call up all these traumatic things to help us wake up.
So we're back to the same thing, which is how do we have more Quanitas, right? Which is, you speak with such eloquence, and it would seem we need a critical mass of Quanitas, right? Which is
I don't think so.
no?
I
Okay.
No, actually, I'm really clear in my fire and water. We have about 80 alum now in Canada and throughout the US, and actually one who's in Italy and Costa Rica now. And so I think we just need more people who are themselves, more people who don't bring the flavor of Quanita, but bring like Katie Boone, who's and Hakima Payne, who's in the audience here, that they bring them, that they bring more of them to the world because I'm doing what's mine to do, but everybody doesn't need to do that, And one of the best compliments, I remember Bianca, the first cohort that graduated, and doing her POL, it was during 2020. And so her family was able to view online. And one of the things her sister said is, I just know Bianca is more Bianca than she's ever been. That's what we need. We need people who are more themselves than they have ever been. You know, the thing is, we don't know who we are. We're so other referred instead of self referred in our stance in the world. And, uh, and it doesn't work. Nobody else can tell you how to be you.
I think what I meant was, how do we create or have more self-initiated people in the world, like
Yes.
a Juanita, right?
Yeah.
That's what we are missing. And that is the root cause
Yeah.
of all our crises,
Yes.
that we are an uninitiated humanity, even though we bring crisis upon ourselves, right? So what is it going to take? And therefore, maybe tell us about the Dagara medicine wheel for those who don't
Yes.
know.
Yeah. So the wheel was brought over to the West. It's from Burkina Faso, in West Africa, by Melodoma Somé and Sabongfu Somé. And they don't necessarily use the wheel, but it was created as translation to us of how to figure out um, the medicine that we bring. And now we all carry all five elements: fire, water, nature, mineral, and earth. But we have a like leading element that holds the medicine that we bring. And in this wheel, in this cosmology, if you're born in the year of zero that ends, a year that ends in 0 or 5, so like 1970 or 1975, then you are an earth spirit. If you're an earth, medicine brings it's the belonging, it's the nurture and care, it's the sense of abundance. Both my parents were earth spirits, and I know like one of the ways my dad used to do it, I didn't understand, I didn't know about the wheel this way, but I have 4 siblings, and he would go to a restaurant to get food for us, and he'd ask what people wanted. He would go to 3 different restaurants if people wanted different things. I'm like, I'm going one place and y'all got to get what you got to get. But that was his nurturing care. That's the way he did it, you know. He wanted you to have what you wanted. 1 and 6 is water. Water, like I said, brings the medicine of forgiveness, reconciliation, bridge building, and peacemaking, and the emotions. And oftentimes, it's 1 and 6. Yes.
96.
And oftentimes, water spirits are really weepy as children because we carry the water. I'm weepy now. I'm like, I cry on commercials, right? It's that when we're connected. But you can be like, I think about Trump, how you can tell he was so disconnected from his element. Like, I can tell he must have been bullied big time for being emotional. And he's still so emotional. He just does it like he just rants off all the time, right? So you can still see the water in him, even in the way that it shows up. And then we have people who are in 2 and 7 is fire. And fire spirits are ones that said to have 1 foot on this world and 1 foot in the ancestor world. So often they're visionaries. They can see things far right. Oftentimes they move really fast. Like they're always doing something. They're busy, busy. They are the truth tellers. They're the ones in the village that often will say the emperor has no clothes on. But in this culture, fire spirits can be pushed so much because people don't always like that. People don't always like the truth telling, that they can start to show up like water. But I think of it like when they show up in that way, it's kind of like lava, you know? And then we have, let's see, oh, and they are also really connected to the dream world. So oftentimes they'll get a lot of their information from dreams. Sometimes they can think they're going crazy because they know things they don't think they should know especially when they're younger. And then 3 and 8 are our nature people. And our nature spirits, they're the tricksters. They're the coyote medicine. It's the growth and development. Um, it's the magic and the mystery and the fun and the play that shows up with the nature spirits. And then 4 and 9 is mineral. And minerals are they're the ones that are conduits of energy. So mineral spirits oftentimes, if you think about the computer strips, they like carry the stories. They carry, they're oftentimes the people in the family that are doing the genealogy or the collecting the pictures and stuff like that. They also They're amazing communicators. My daughter is mineral, and before she could talk, she would do knock knock jokes. She'd be like knock knock, and you say who's there, and she'd say blah 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 blah, and you say blah blah who, and she just say blah blah blah, and she'd crack up. She just so thrilled with herself, right? Because she knew the rhythm of the knock knock jokes, and mineral people often when they're young. They or even you go in their house now when they're older, you'll find a bowl of rocks. There's often rocks, a bowl of rocks someplace in their home. And my daughter, she like gravel. I did have to always clean out her pockets when she was little because she was so drawn to the stones. Now, all of these elements, can help us and knowing and like leaning into what flavor, I guess, is my unique genius and how I can use it wherever I am.
Mm. So it's interesting how the fourth and fifth element in your model is called nature and mineral. In
Yes,
the Indic system, it is air and space.
yes,
So, but they do map on pretty, I get it.
yes.
In the Chinese system, they use slightly different. They use like metal and wood and,
Mm-hmm.
uh, I would
Yeah.
love, before I open for questions, I would love to have you take us through one practice,
Mm.
something that you think we can learn.
Ritual for yourself that's connected to your element. So, examples like water. Often, sometimes what I'll do is I will speak into a glass of water. I go to a body of water. Sometimes I go by myself, but oftentimes I'll ask somebody to come there so we can bear witness. You and I did this, Nalima, I believe, down at the Ohio River when you were here. Um, and you speak what you want to let go of or release into the water. And the bigger body of water, whatever that is for you. And you get to then thank it for taking it. Thank for the whatever it is you're letting go of for being there, the gratitude for how it served you in the past and how it may not serve you right now.
Mhm.
And then offer it to the water and then speak what you want it to be replaced by. So
Mhm.
often we don't speak what we want it to be replaced by, and the universe hates a void. So if you don't
Mhm.
speak what you want it to be replaced by, that old stuff will just come back. And so
Mhm.
with water, you can do that. You can do the same kind of thing in burying something. So, like making a bundle of, or even writing something and burying it underground and having the earth take it and help. And it uses it as like, it's like food for the elements to help. And in fire and water we make bundles where we put together these bundles and they represent what is it that we're really really ready to let go of, and then we do a ritual and offer it to the fire. Or stones, like one of the things when my kids had when they were young and they'd have nightmares, I tell them you tell your nightmare to the stone and then you bury it underground and it no longer belongs to you, so you can't even speak of it anymore. You've given that
Mhm.
story.
give it to you. Take it. And in return, the mother's Sri Aurobindo Samadhi is just across from there. And I said, in return, I just want what the mother wills for me. No more karmic imprints from past lives where I'm repeating my old patterns. This time around and here on, it's what the mother wills. No more what Nilima wants, I'm done. I know you all adore Quanita, so please go ahead and speak, share.
And if you don't, it's okay.
Yeah, maybe raise your hand. So that's I can then give you the floor, the mic. Some of you left. Yeah, Rebecca.
I just love you both.
Oh.
It's so delicious having this conversation.
Mm.
I have a curiosity. So I haven't heard this kind of system before.
Mhm.
And so I'm a nature.
Yes.
I would have imagined I was a fire, but I'm a nature. And as I was thinking about it, I was thinking about like the things that have been forgot, the rituals that have been forgotten in nature.
Yes.
And since I spend a whole lot of my time thinking about reciprocity, I'm curious, are there reciprocity, reciprocity practices and rituals that have been forgotten that are coming back in on online now that you're understanding or as part of your description?
Well, I think part of it is, how do we give back to the earth or to nature? And we just did this at our retreat too, because the last retreat, one of the things we do is we give to the land that has given to us and held us for these three. And for us, some of it is, like um, weeding flower beds for us. Some of that, we did that, or cleaning the trails, or even inside, like there's a organizing the art closet in a celebration, like so they're like trying on the fabric and play, and it's the singing and then it's the joy that we can pour back into the earth that feeds it. And so to me it's that, it's like the dancing and the singing and the play and the joy and the just not holding such heaviness. It's the celebration of this of the generosity of the earth. And I always think it's so funny when people talk about save the earth. I'm like, the earth doesn't need us to save the earth. The earth will be here long after we're gone. It's like you try to save your own self, like you know. And maybe that's not even supposed to happen. I don't make that assumption, but I just I think that it's joy. I think that's why I love, like, the moment we have like a really good cry, laughter follows it. It's like if you pay attention, like you just like, and then all of a sudden you just start laughing. Like the joy rushes in because they're the same thing. It's like the grief and joy, the grief and praise are the same thing. So you're making room but it's like a sphere of emotion that gets blocked if you block it at the grief. So when you open more of the grief, you get more access to the joy because emotions don't differentiate. Either you have access or you don't. Yeah.
Thank you. In fact, that brings me to, the thought of how cultures hold grief and trauma. Some cultures hold on to it as a necessary thing to remember. right? Because if you were to forget that, if you were to move on from that, it would be as if you are dishonoring the pain and the suffering that your ancestors endured. Some cultures hold it in that way. And then there are some cultures who may just say, forget that it ever happened. Let's just eat, sleep, make merry, right? Drink and dance and do not go back there. Put it behind you, move on like it didn't happen. Where is that sweet spot between the two, Juanita?
Well, I think it's kind of like, I am the dreams of my ancestors. It's like knowing, like, there's a woman, Bea Richards, who played everybody's black mama in the day in movies and stuff. Guess who's coming to dinner, all that stuff. And there's a documentary of her while she was dying. And one of the things that she talks about is she wrote a poem called A Black Woman Speaks of White Womanhood, White Supremacy, and Peace. And in this poem, she talks about how white women were enslaved too. It was just a matter of degree. She's like, we came in chains, they came willingly, they came in bracelets, right? And even the fact that they would hand over their children to be nursed by the slaves so that their breasts wouldn't sag and their husbands wouldn't go elsewhere. And she says that the humanity that was in these slave women that could see the innocence of these babies and that would nurse them instead of starving them to death. That humanity, even though they knew these babies were gonna grow up and rape their daughters and kill their sons, the level of humanity that takes. So I know when I am in something that's really tough and hard, I think about that. I think about that's what's in me. Whatever I think I'm doing, like it helps to remind me of what they went through for me to be here. Now, I'm not wallowing in the grief. And actually it keeps me from wallowing in my own grief when I get clear about what price was paid for me to be able to be here.
Yeah, thank you. There's this quote, I think it's Richard Rohr who said, pain that is not transformed is transmitted or transferred. That on one hand, we have to acknowledge what happened, but on the other hand, we have to compost it and move through it and go back to the source of the joy.
Yeah,
Because it's short life. You don't want to spend it grieving a past that you didn't even perhaps go through yourself.
yeah,
Um, so yeah, this whole idea of restorative justice, like there is no reconciliation without the truth being acknowledged. And there is no moving forward without that restorative justice, right? So that you can truly claim your joy without guilt. No? Andrea,
yeah.
you have something to share? Yeah, Juanita, go ahead. And I want to hear Andrea.
I was just gonna say, I don't think uh, I've been taught shame, blame, and guilt are not emotions. They're actually where we go to hide from emotions, and usually it's deep grief and sadness. That
Yes.
we've so married responsibility with shame, blame, or guilt, but oftentimes we go to shame, blame, and guilt so we don't have to take responsibility. And so it's like how, for me, responsibility is just the ability to respond. Yeah. And Andrea?
No, I'm just really, really enjoying listening. It resonates deeply, and the things that you say as guideposts, they are remembrances. And what I realized with myself is that I sometimes suffer from, you could call it spiritual burnout, or that I thought, oh my God, like really, really, I don't know if I have the strength to go through it again and again and again. Also because I'm getting older. And I feel it. So it's not necessarily that it's something in itself. Yeah. So I'm just wondering, like, if you also recognize it that there can be this just this being tired, and even with everything that we know, that I know, to get myself back and take responsibility for that part. Maybe I am in the middle of also, how can I, in a self-honoring way, take responsibility for that part also,
Yes.
for everything that has cost me. Yeah.
Mm. I wrote at my 50th birthday, I wrote I say yes to these things, a whole set of things. And one of the things was being clear that cost does not mean detriment.
Mhm.
Because I think in the past, I've held cost as detriment,
Mhm.
you know? And so I've held it with a weight that I don't necessarily hold it with now. I think that there's also this piece about like, we get to be human. I think sometimes we can, especially I think for white people, is you're told you're supposed to be perfect.
Mhm.
So I think there's a way and a level in which you can hold yourself that people of color don't have the same because we're told we'll never be perfect. So that people don't always carry that in the same way, then it gives you a lot of freedom. Okay, if I can't, then I might as well just be me. And so I think there's a way in like how can you, it's the kindness
Mhm.
when you get to those places. Like I spend a lot of time, I said, I spend a lot of time couch bonding because the work does take a lot,
Mhm.
and so sometimes I just need to get horizontal so that whatever needs to be integrated in me can be.
Mhm.
And I can just watch shows or whatever and oftentimes I do shows that actually will make me cry because again, it's more release for me and I don't have to know what I'm releasing to let it go.
Mhm. 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 Thank you. I really feel permission to get horizontal, which I do. It was the that's the only
Yeah.
thing to incorporate. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, yeah. And the puzzle for me exactly was like, I know that I don't want to be a victim of that. It's just also like while moving through it and
Yeah.
having been in so many
Things I'm picking up. One is 16 months. Today people are saying, even if you say 16 weeks, oh, that's too much. You taking people through some great course of transformation, and they're like, can we do it in like one day? So, and I love that you're saying 16 months, right?
Yes.
Like, there is
And
no
three
such thing.
retreats. Three
Yes.
retreats from Wednesday evening to Sunday afternoon. So they're like not just a weekend.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That we need these slow stories, these slow journeys for real, deep, lasting transformations.
Yeah.
That is one, that the work takes time and you can't speed it up. It takes the time, it takes the psyche, takes the time it takes to heal itself. The other thing I just picked up from you is that cost doesn't have to be detriment. That's a beautiful reframe to understand that growth comes at a cost. We
No, experiential, but it's not experimental. It's an experiential process. And so there's a learning and there's a surrender to the not knowing that happens in that 16 months. But it isn't experiential. Like we've done it. It's like I always say, I've been here before, so I know the way out. And it's being willing to lean in and be held by community and elder, peers and elder in your journey. And the stuff is your life. You know, it's not another thing, it's a thing that helps you hold the things in your life. Katie, I see Katie and Hakima, who just finished going through. Is there something you would add to that?
I'm happy to chime in. I would say can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay, for me, the journey with fire and water was the space, place, and time of community that was needed to help hold me through the journey of really doing a deep dive in my own work and bringing out who I am. For myself, one of the pieces I shared in my presentation of learning was that because of the fire and water journey, I was able to stay true to who I was throughout a PhD process, in writing up a dissertation, and not getting too caught up in academic academy type of things, but staying true to the ways of being and knowing and relating that were showing up in the work and community that I was a part of. So for me, the fire and water journey is a gift to kind of create a community around you to support you in the unfolding of like the truth of who you are and what leadership you bring out into the world that's more wise, instead of just the practical kind of ways of thinking about how like how leaders lead. It's more about like who you are and how that leads.
And would you share
That's what
your
I've had.
dissertation, what you're doing it on?
Oh gosh, yeah. I'm doing a dissertation on how evaluators work with place, and the title of it is "Putting Evaluation in Its Place in a Good Way." I've worked with a group of Dakota horseback riders who do a truth healing and reconciliation horse ride from Crow Creek, Fort Thompson area in South Dakota. And they ride about 330 miles in the middle of winter on horseback, to the place where my feet are, in Makato, Mankato, Minnesota. It's the site of the largest mass execution on US soil, that took place in December of 1862. And there was 38 Dakota warriors that were hung in our downtown. My ancestral lineage comes from the settler side of the story, and I've been working on trying to understand what's my role and responsibility in this work, not like as a white savior or anything like that, but to actually partner in the interdependent journey of what healing and justice looks like in this place. And so the research was following the ride and interviewing riders, and holding circles in the different communities that the ride rode through, and working on like what does reconciliation mean in this place and at this time, as the ride's coming through. And you have a lot of white rural Minnesotans that are sitting in a circle for the first time with Dakota neighbors and friends, and people coming through that they've never met before, and having these deep conversations, after experiencing stories of what the writers shared in those spaces was really, really powerful. So that's the dissertation research, is kind of like how do we actually work with place and land in a way that honors the stories that have unfolded over time, even before, like the times before the peoples, to really acknowledge like all the ways that the land shapes us and holds us in the work that we do and the patterns that emerge in the ways that we are in community together or not. So it's been a journey. It's been a journey.
Thank you.
I'm so delighted to hear this, and I'm going to invite Weepka to just share last year her offering as one of our Truth and Reconciliation facilitators was The Land Keeps the Score. So something you wish to just share, as you know, you've been listening today, as well as I think you joined yesterday or day before's calls as well. What's coming up for you, Weepka?
Oh, you're putting me on a spot here. I've been flowing with it, deeply appreciating also the difference between Juanita and you. It's a really different aspect that each of you embodies. It's beautiful. The earthbound spirituality and your Indic spirit. I feel that it's a different quality, and I like both. Last year, we offered a conversation with Imelda Almquist, she calls herself a forest witch. How do I put that all together? And she very consciously uses the word witch because it has such a negative connotation in our everyday language, when in reality, those that were called witches were the earth keepers of Europe, the old women who had the earth knowledge, who held the earth powers, and they, of course, were eradicated by the church. So she very consciously spoke about, calls herself a witch. And we spoke about different examples of communing with the land, of talking with the land. Sorry, I have this little spirit here with me. And how in shamanic cultures you can speak to the earth, and she shared, for example, talking to continents, like saying, how does Africa view Europe? How does the Americas view Europe? And I just don't remember all the details. I just found it so deeply interesting to listen. Now, today we talked about our single personal experiences and how we walk our single personal path. Last year, it was also, in our conversation, it was also really to speak to the land, the spirit of not just place, but say Europe, Lady Europe, or Africa, and the dishonoring that took place on the land itself. So that is, you may want to listen to it. It was a really great conversation.
Last year, the theme was decolonizing ourselves.
Right.
And it's all about colonizations, actually. So in that context. So, we're coming to the close of today, and I just want to open what today's conversation is in the context of this year, since the theme is healing ideology impacted histories across lands, lands keep the score. We started with Kashmir on the first day, the full moon on the 10th of July. On the 11th of July, we had Rwanda and healing the wounds of the genocide there. Today we have, the slavery wound of the US, and after this call, we have Iris Sadeh talking about what's happening in Israel and her experience as an Israeli Jew. It carries on like this, I am so grateful that we get to meet every year, and somehow we are called to this work and this theme, and we show up. And it's getting deeper, it's getting more real. How come you don't have more people on your calls or whatever? Well, first of all, this will become a podcast. So it's going to be there and people can listen to it across time. But also going back to what Quanita said, that it's not necessarily about volumes. It's about the quality of the work that gets done, and it can have a ripple effect beyond our understanding or comprehension. So I'm going to hold that as my prayer and my wish for all these Truth and Reconciliation Week dialogues that are happening this year. And may all these lands where there has been so much pain, trauma, conflict, and the ancestors who need to be honored and grieved for their experience there, may that get done with those of us who have come back to do so. And we have Andrea's call coming up. Is it tomorrow or day after, Andrea, with the Ocean in a Drop? We have a session with Wiebke coming up. So please track us on our truthandreconciliation.net website and join us for the upcoming sessions. We are on till the 16th of July. And some of us may also be offering things beyond that in this month, because this whole just like March has become International Women's Month, not just 8th of March, in the same way, I'm noticing that July is becoming Truth and Reconciliation Month because facilitators who can't make it for the week either do it before or after. So this whole month of July, let's continue to hold the intention of truth and reconciliation from the inside out.
Yeah.
So with that, any last words from you, Quanita, before we sign off? How would you sum up today? What is the one message from your session for our viewers?
Well, I think one of the things that just came to me is, I'm an integral theory girl, so it's how all disciplines connect. And one of the things that is present there is it's called karma and creativity. In every moment, karma exists, everything that has happened beforehand. And each time something happens, it makes a groove in the universe to makes it easier for the next time and the next time and the next time. And so that means even for the next person, right? And the creativity is at any moment we can jump the track and choose a new groove. And of course, it's harder to keep that because it's not as deep as the other. But that the best thing or the most important thing we can do in supporting each other is to take on our own work. Because then it makes it easier for the next person and the next person and the next person.
Yeah, that is my one big takeaway from today, that the way we are going to heal the world is to take on our own work.
Yeah.
One
We
life
so
at a time.
think by healing the world, we'll heal ourselves, but it actually is just the opposite. By healing ourselves, we heal the world.
May we know how to self-initiate and make the conscious journey instead of receiving it through trauma.
Thank you.
So with that, so much you for joining, and especially today to meet you and to connect on Truth and Reconciliation every year, year on year, is a real privilege. Thank you for who you are. Thank you for what you bring to our world. And may you long continue to be a force of truth, forgiveness, and reconciliation anywhere that you find yourself planted and flowing.
Thank you. Thank you.
Much
Thank you.
love. Thank you. Catch you on the future calls.
Yes.
Bye-bye now.
Bye.
Bye.